Okay, switch questions. When you mentioned predicate calculus, were you at all influenced by Frege? Because that's the first thing I thought of. In the register?
Yeah, to an extent. I know Frege has it, I forget what it's called, a non-linear tree base.
Yeah, it's literally, I don't know the German, but in English it's literally concept writing.
Yes. That is a distant influence, I suppose.
Okay.
Yes. Sure.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I didn't mean to.
Yeah.
So this is actually for me, not for my RC. How do you deal with non-referentiality? Like so things that don't have a reference. So like the King of Canada's ball, where there's no entity that actually exists. Is it like a descriptive sort of thing that you would do? Like in some cases, there's a really clear mapping between what we have in a conceptual reference.
This might be the question, right? But
I think that actually is in the language creation hangout that we did.
Oh.
Because we were translating in semantics.
Anyway, we were translating a passage from our office.
Anyways, so it came out from that. If you say the King of Canada is bald, so you're hypothesizing a world in which Canada exists, presumably the Canada that does exist. But that Canada has a king, and that king is bald. So you would use this sort of construction, except not, or you would inside out, and posit that world. Or you could just lie.
No. Yeah, you could just lie, or you could just, have a computer reference which, doesn't, have an element in your syntax which doesn't refer to anything in a model or something like this. I forget what syntaxation is called. Syntaxation's in the audience. Help me out.
Right.
Well, let's go on.
Yes.
Yeah. How do we first?
Yeah. Might be a silly question. Are there spoken, like in general, for non-linear language, are there spoken forms, or are they usually only written?
So that is a difficult question.
I don't know of any non-linear languages.
Oh, really?
You do? OE is spoken form.
OE has a spoken form that's by Scholar Bean. It's one of the inspirations for Tunnels, and it's excellent. So I suggest you take a look at it. I don't know how much he's elaborated the spoken form, but it exists. I have very deliberately made the decision that Tunnels will not have a spoken form, period. And the reason for that is I do not want any cognitive biases or influences or assumptions that might be made when you're saying, oh, well, this would be easier to express in spoken form, and so we might tweak it a bit. No, screw that. Writing is primary, and unlike virtually all the other languages, this is what we're going to do. Maybe sometime in the extreme future there might be a way to speak it, but there's no way to, there's not even a place to start. So you can read this from wherever you want. There's no speaking board.
On the other hand, you do want to have a data serialization format.
Yeah, so
We're
working on that now. So that there may be a way to write it for JavaScript purposes, just to render it, and there we're forced to, but otherwise, no. John.
Given that this system is designed to reflect an underlying language that's based on predicate calculus, could it in theory be borrowed and adapted as a writing system for something like Lojban, which is also based on predicate calculus? I realize it probably would go against your desire for it to have any spoken form.
Maybe not.
So you could Lojban be written in also something.
The noted connection paradigm. Probably. Lojban has theta rolls, and the theta rolls of Lojban are 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And so maybe you have to have all of the endpoints where it would be stacked.
Yes.
Yeah.
Actually, I think Lojban might do better with page. Anne Rasta has something I don't think he's actually published much about it, but he has a two-dimensional Levasian thing. which is, I think, a lot closer to the Lojban aesthetic, shall we say. But yeah, I certainly think that any predicate-oriented language could be rendered like this. Not necessarily with this format, because we, as Alex mentioned, we have other desiderata than just being non-linear.
So you mentioned that conversations get very messy in panels.
Yeah.
So just if you actually can have tried to hold conversations with each other in this language, and how do you deal with the challenges of meeting, especially now with this non-linear?
Well, the answer to your first question is yes. For a long time, we had just a whiteboard in our apartment, and one of us would write something on the whiteboard.
The joy of whiteboard, you have to erase.
That also helps, yes. And the other would just add on to it. We have had conversations with panels. How do we deal with, sorry, what was the second part?
Well, how do you deal with the messiness that comes out?
The messiness. It's not actually that much of a problem in smaller contexts. So if you're talking about something this big, then you have issues like trying to avoid line crossing. So there's computer science theory where you can say for any sufficiently complex and glossing here graph that has wires interconnecting on a two-dimensional surface alone, you will have crossings. If it were in 3 dimensions, you would. If it were in 2 dimensions. So we try to avoid that through different means, and the more complex it gets, if it's something like this, then we have to start taking things into consideration. Although that actually reminds me of one of the inspirations, which is Story of Your Life by Ted Chiang, not the movie, the short story. My thoughts of the movie are not as complimentary. The movie itself is great, but the writing is the thing. So if you were to do this, you would need to think in advance how the whole thing would progress and plan to write there and sort of do graph relaxation ahead of time. And that is a feature of it that I actually really like.
If you're not having fun, you can say, oh, I'm not this thing. I'll draw some more lines here, some ideas here, like that.
Yeah.
So you can get rid of it.
Is there any way to express emphasis, like to single
Yes.
out any particular element as a
This is one thing I think.
So this is bolder than the rest of it? That's intentional?
Although if you ask me, I think some of the size of it result in almost kind of under-emphasizing focus and information structure. Because there is still something that would be more.
What's like the general speed of a conversation? For example, we're talking, it's fast obviously, right? It's like almost instantaneous. What's like the general, like, hard to answer on the...
Well, we have no fluent speed.
Right.
This is a consideration that actually comes up in my essay, OJIL, and something I thought about here. This is geared not towards being easy for the writer, but towards being cognitively better for the reader. So even if it requires more planning to execute and sort of thinking ahead and structuring it and all that, that's the sacrifice we do. So we are not trying to make it super fast. John can maybe sympathize with us on that one, on how long it takes to create a single example. I don't think it takes us quite as long as him, but yeah, it's not that fast, but we haven't had that much practice on it.
Naturalistic application, maybe even 50 corners would be faster.
I think we're out of time, so if you have any more questions, please come up. I'd be happy to talk to you. Thank you.